Hi, it's Heather Clayton Staker at Ready to Blend. Let's look at weekly blended learning arc schedules. By now, you are familiar with the four elements of a blended learning arc. As you've reviewed earlier in this micro-credential, teachers spend their time doing group discussion, one-on-one check-ins, and maybe they'll participate in collaborative work. Meanwhile, students do the group discussion. They'll have some independent work driven by an online platform. This is where we really think about the online learning part. Collaborative work where they're working in teams, either face-to-face or virtually, and then close with a group discussion. So how do you take those modalities and transfer them into a workable schedule? A lot of it depends on the type of schedule that you have in your class and in your school. And oftentimes teachers don't have a lot of flexibility to adjust their bell schedule. And so the idea is to fit your blended learning arc into whatever design constraints you have with your given bell schedule. So let's look at some examples of how teachers might do that. This is Ms. Rodriguez. She has a very traditional bell schedule. Her class periods are maybe 45 minutes long. And so the question arises, is it possible to do these flex models, these highly flexible blended learning arc models in a traditional bell schedule? Ms. Rodriguez thinks so, and here's how she does it. For her face-to-face classrooms, she starts every instructional block with a quick group discussion to connect her community of learners, to inspire them to excellence, or to equip them with a skill that they'll need for their work sprint ahead. Meanwhile, her students on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays do independent work while she's doing one-on-one check-ins. And then she sets aside Wednesdays and Fridays for their group projects. She closes each class period with a quick group discussion for reflection. If her class pivots to a virtual environment where the learners are learning remotely, then she just does group discussion at the beginning and the end of the week. She found that for her classroom, it was too hard for her learners to get on a video conferencing call every single day for the class. So for her, this is what worked best. Again, adjust it to your circumstances, to the ages of your children, to the technology that they have available in their homes. But for her, that was what worked best. And then she encouraged them to do their independent work on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, and then to meet together virtually for their collaborative work on Wednesdays and Fridays, which preserved some of the culture that they had in their classroom already of collaborative work on Wednesdays and Fridays. And then they closed out the week with a really great video conference reflection on Fridays. Now let's look at Mr. Swift's classroom. He has a block schedule, and so he's able to have longer work sprints. So he does a group discussion and to launch and to close every class, and then he balances that time between independent work and collaborative work. And that's true for Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Meanwhile, he's spending his time doing one-on-one check-ins while the students are working independently. Now let's look at what he does for a virtual environment. For a virtual environment, like the previous teacher, he found that it was most successful to have his group discussions on Mondays and Fridays rather than try to check in every day. There are certainly schools that check in every day. In fact, we'll look at an example of that in the next version, but Mr. Swift found that the Monday and Friday group discussions were the most successful for him. And then he encouraged his students to do their independent work predominantly on Mondays and Fridays in big blocks of time, and then to spend Wednesdays in a big block of time working on their collaborative projects and games. And during independent work time, that was when he did his one-on-one check-ins. Again, at the end of the week, they did a group discussion to close out the week, to think about their biggest takeaways from the week, and to strategize about habits of success for the week ahead. Now let's look at the third example, Miss Lee. She has a whole day model. This is one of the more unconventional models, but an emerging model that it facilitates flex blended learning pretty well. And you'll see that in her circumstances, her learners pretty much do the same thing, whether they are face-to-face or remote. So regardless of whether they're meeting face-to-face or in a virtual environment, they maintain their cadence where the learners are expected to be up and ready for their group discussion in the morning. And then they move into their independent work while the teacher does one-on-one check-ins with them, whether it's face-to-face or remotely. There are plenty of times for breaks, lots of outdoor times and moments for the learners to run around. They've also built some other experiences into their day, like quiet reading time, art, music, drama. They do another group discussion after the lunch and quiet reading time or art so that they can refocus and be prepared for another work sprint. Their afternoon work sprint this time is a collaborative project or game. And then they close out the day every day with expressions of gratitude for each other, character call outs, and takeaways. So I hope that you'll reflect on one consideration, which is that there's no single one right way to do this. And so much of it depends on the bell schedule that you have. Also, the age of your learners. First graders might only do 8 minutes independent work sprints originally until they build up their stamina for a little bit longer. Whereas seniors in high school can be equipped to have longer blocks of time where they're getting their own work done. So these are all things to take into consideration as you customize your own weekly blended learning arc schedule.